Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. I am your host for today's Photoshop challenge. My name is Sam Peterson. Great to see everybody. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. What's up to everybody in the chat? How you doing, Ted, Clarissa, Andre, Cody Bear, our moderator? Hey, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me, if everything looks good on my end. What's up, Frank and Wade? Good to see everybody. So today we are going to be doing Selections 101. This is kind of a back to basics challenge here. If any of you are Photoshop veterans or veterans to these Photoshop challenges, a lot of this is going to be review for you, but I'm also hoping I can kind of show you some things that maybe you haven't used as much before, or something you haven't seen before. And if anyone is new to these challenges, this is going to be a really good foundation to get started if you consider yourself a beginner. Selections are such a core fundamental part of Photoshop, of photo compositing, of image editing. So this is going to give you a lot of tools to work with. Yeah, the stash has gone into an era, Ted. Maybe we'll bring it back at some point. But let's jump into Photoshop. Let me show you what we're working with here. So first off, I wanted to go over some of the manual selection tools. There's a lot of AI-driven tools. There's a lot of manual tools. There's a ton of selection tools in general, really depending on the situation. So let's start with one of my favorites, a core foundational one, and that's the Lasso tool. This is about as manual as it gets. You can just select exactly what you want. You just draw out with your mouse or your tablet, and you can get the selection you want. So it's very, very manual. If I have something where my selection's not quite right and I just need to grab an area like of this ear, I'll just draw it right around there. I'm holding on Shift to add to my selection, and you can hold on Alt or Option to subtract from your selection. And that's true of pretty much all the selection tools. You'll also notice we have a little feather option up at the top. So if you don't want a perfectly crisp, hard edge lasso tool selection, you can also feather it to get a little bit of a softer edge. Lasso tool can also be used in painting. It's not an uncommon method to kind of get one hard and one blended edge, to use the lasso tool in that way. So that's a common thing you might see as well. And if I zoom out, I'll get a little bit of a smoother edge there. So I use the lasso tool quite a bit, just in many instances. Also, we have the polygonal lasso tool. If you click and hold on these tools, it will show you more. So we have the polygonal lasso tool if you need more of a hard edge. That can be really useful. You can subtract by holding Alt or Option, just like we did before. There's also the magnetic lasso tool, which I don't really use as much. I'd be curious if anyone in chat uses this a lot. But it's the same thing as the lasso tool. It just uses a little bit of this kind of sticky snapping to try to kind of understand what you're trying to grab. So if you just kind of do this, you'll see it just goes wherever. But as you get closer to objects, you'll see it starts to kind of snap into place a little bit. So it can kind of aid you if you're trying to use selections quickly. And it does a pretty good job. Just really depends what you're going for. So it's a little bit more AI driven there. So those are the lasso tools. Those are some of the common ones you might be using. Hey, what's up, Annika? Good to see you. You love this one, you use it a lot? Nice. I use the regular lasso tool a lot. Polygonal a little bit, and probably magnetic the least, but the magnetic has some really cool kind of assist to it. So Marquee tools, that's another very foundational selection tool. It's just rectangle. You can hold out, click and drag to grab whatever you might want. And if you hold on Shift, you can constrain the proportions to a square. And then same thing as before, you hold on Shift to add, hold on Alt or Option to subtract. And then we also have the elliptical marquee tool. So same thing, you can hold on Shift if you want to keep it as perfect circle. And you can also hold on Alt if you want to drag and open it from the center. And then I can combine that with Shift if I want to keep a perfect circle. And furthermore, this is something that not everyone seems to know, but a really helpful thing to adjust it is use spacebar. So if you hold on spacebar, you can actually move it. I can let go of spacebar. I'm still holding on Shift and Option or Alt, and then I can continue to drag it. So if you're trying to select something like a basketball, for example, this might be a good tool, or a planet, but you can drag it out, and if it's not perfectly aligned, you can adjust it to be more on the edge, increase it or decrease it to get it perfect. Gives you a lot of precision when using this tool. So those are the Marquee tools. Also, just very simple manual tools that you'll probably find yourself using in a lot of situations. I want to go next to the pen tool. Now, I feel like a lot of people swear by the pen tool. They use it for a lot of situations. I personally find it's most useful when you're when you're selecting something that's hard edge. So if I was going to cut out a cell phone, for example, especially if it's, at an angle, I might use the pen tool because it gives you these really clean edges that you have a lot of control over. Now, if you use the pen tool, you can click and drag to get these nice curves. You'll see it extends these arms the more you drag. And what's nice about it is you can kind of rough in your shape to begin with, but then you can go and edit it afterwards. So if I want to edit my arms here, I'm just holding on Alt or Option just to grab one of these arms. I can also just hold on Control or Command to have both arms kind of working. You can extend them, one of the arms. You can kind of adjust that curve. If you do Alt or Option, you can actually kind of get rid of those arms to get a sharper edge. Clicking on Alt or Option, you can just control one of the arms. So there's a lot of precision that you can get with this just by kind of clicking around and selecting what you need. I can also just drag one of these. So it gives you a lot of control, very useful, especially with hard edges. I definitely played around with it. I will say the pen tool has a bit of a learning curve. Some people do find it kind of difficult when getting started with, but it's a very powerful tool. And like I said, some people use the pen tool for the majority of their selections. Also with the pen tool, you can go and make it's by default here, this little drop down, it's set at a path. I could also put it to shape, but after the fact, I can also make a selection with it. So now it turned it into a selection. Control or Command Z to undo that. I can use it as a mask, where I'm masking out that selection, or I can click the shape button and just turn it into a shape where I can then edit the fill and the stroke. So the pen tool has a lot of flexibility there. Very useful. Definitely check it out if you haven't. So what else? We got the magic wand tool. I don't know if anyone uses the magic wand tool. I do find quite a bit of use for it in my illustrative process. But that's going to be right here. Third one down. Magic wand tool is nice for me when I need to select quick areas of color. So if I have flat colors on my illustrations, I typically do flat colors first, and I'll put those all on one layer. So if I need to select like a shirt that's, yellow like this, I'll just click that. And for my flat colors, since I'm not using a lot of different shades, it'll just select the whole thing and I can quickly brush onto it and just have that selection. You can also adjust the tolerance. So if we put the tolerance at 10, you'll see, and I'll click the same part of the shirt, it's selecting a much smaller range of colors. So it's not being as flexible with the range. If you want to extend the range more, I could do 100, and now it's grabbing more shades beyond just that yellow that I'm clicking. So I think the default was 32. That's usually where I keep it. Let's see. So quick selection tool, this one's just it does what it says it does, and I use this a lot for grabbing things quickly. So if you click and drag, for example, I could grab this whole sky area, and that was pretty fast. It's not going to be as precise if you're just using that as the tools I'm going to show you coming up, but it can be very useful for just grabbing certain areas. Like if I want to select the shirt, I held on Shift there to add to the selection. If it selected his arm on accident and that was too much, I can hold on Alt or Option, again, to subtract from it. But you can see it's kind of snapping into place using a little bit of AI to figure out where those edges are. Quick selection tool I use anytime I need something quick, easy to get general selection, but I don't need to mask something out perfectly. And of course, you can combine all these tools. So a lot of times I'll use the quick selection tool, and then I'll jump into the lasso tool just to grab a little pixel it missed, refine it. But now let's get into some of the more complex tools that use AI and can kind of get you a cleaner mask if that's what you're looking for, depending upon the situation. So what I want to do is I want to show you select subject. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with this, but if I have the quick selection tool selected, you'll see select subject at the top. So let's try that on this image. It's going to use AI to kind of figure out what the subject of this is. And for this image, it's quite easy because it's a clean blue background. So I can go into select and mask from here. I can just mask it at this point, but we get a little bit of this blue fringing in the hair. The rest of it actually looks really good because it's a, it's a pretty easy image. But let's do Control Z, go back, and then do select mask. And this is where we can do a little bit of refining. Now with this, we have our tools over here on the left. We have the quick selection tool. We have the refine edge brush tool, which is what I want to show you. And we also just have a brush tool, just regular brush tool. So with the refine edge brush tool, I can actually just kind of like scrub my mouse over here back and forth over these gaps in the hair where the blue is showing through. And it does a pretty great job about kind of figuring out what's supposed to be there and what's not. So let's just get that part of the hair too. I don't know if there's anything I missed. I'm gonna get the edges of this hair. I think that's looking pretty good though. And if something like that happens where the ear is getting a little bit, I can always just go in with that manual brush tool, put that back. And also you have different overlays here. If you go to the top right, you'll see this view. I have it on overlay, but you could do things like onion skin, marching ants, different ways to display how the selection is working. This is a one that can be really helpful to see the silhouette and the edges it's getting, but I often keep it on overlay. So let's just do okay. Oh, but before we do, actually, you'll see this little option at the bottom that says decontaminate colors. That's very useful, especially in this situation. I'd recommend clicking on that. And we can put out to, you'll see, sorry, it says output to, gets you an option. And I'm going to keep it on new layer with layer mask. So it's going to make a new layer for us. Now, what's great about this is, let me make a new background layer. I'll just fill this in with, I don't know, some sort of red tone. You'll see the hair looks really good. The edges around the hair look great. But if we didn't do that, if we didn't do decontaminate colors, you might get a result that looks a little bit more like this, where you have this blue halo fringing. So that's where it really comes in handy and gives you a much more realistic look. Let's see how clean that looks. But in this circumstance, I might just want to keep the same blue that we have for the background here. I kind of like that color, but now at least we separated the figure from the background, so we have a lot more flexibility with that. Will the select subject only work if the background is a solid fill color, a plain background with nothing else besides the color? No, it doesn't need to be like a clean separation. I think there's definitely going to be situations where the background is a lot more complex and it's almost blending in with the figure in terms of like similar colors, similar values. The more distinct the contrast is between the subject and the background, the easier it is for the AI to pick that out. But that's where sometimes you're going to be combining these tools where the AI will do a really good job for the majority of it, but you may need to clean it up manually here and there with other tools. But for the most part, select subject tends to do a really good job. It doesn't need to be perfectly separated or contrasty like this. So what did I want to do next? We got our figure cut out. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about object selection tool. We'll hide all our other layers here. So the object selection tool, if anyone's not familiar with it, this is actually kind of a newer tool in the grand scheme of things with Photoshop. But the object selection tool here, click and hold next to quick selection tool. Now the object selection tool, when it came out, essentially what you do is you just drag around the object you want and it uses AI. Sorry, I have my wrong layer selected here, so make sure you're selecting the right layer. You can also have sample all layers, and in that case, it will look at everything on the screen currently, but let's select our duck layer, grab that, and I can just hold on shift and I can add to more selections here, and it's just perfectly selecting these ducks. The object selection tool is really useful when you have a lot of different objects in a scene and you're trying to pick them out. So there's an option here at the top called Object Finder, which now makes it even easier because it just generates, it loads a little bit, and now it knows exactly what the objects in my scene are. Now this is another easy example. You can use this on a lot more complex examples, and object selection tool actually is really smart with how it selects these out. So I would try it out on different images and see what you get. But from here, I can just click that selection. I can hold on shift, click. It's highlighting in pink, so I'm just clicking, and now I got these great selections. So if you ever have a lot of different objects in a scene and you don't want to have to try to mask each one out individually, try the object selection tool and see how much it can get. And it's going to save you a lot of time. You can always clean it up with other tools. If it got like 90% of the selection, 95%, you just need a little bit more, you can always edit it, but that saves a ton of time. And now we got some ducks cut out. So I want to jump over to another situation that's going to be a little bit different, where what if we have an image where this one has a lot of objects, but let's imagine there's another flower image where it's a field of flowers, for example. Whenever you have an image that has a distinct color difference between it, the color range option can be really useful. So I'm going to make sure I have my flower image selected. I'm going to go to select color range. And now what this is you'll see there's a little eyedropper. So I'm just going to select something random. It's highlighting the colors in white. I have the selection preview set as grayscale. You can also do black matte, white matte, or quick mask. I personally really like grayscale. You can also select none. So if I just want to select this whitish pink flower, I'll select that. And I can see the preview here has changed. Now I can add to that selection too. If I select this plus eyedropper, I'm now adding more colors to my selection. So I'm just selecting these different areas of pink. Now, if I want a better view of what is actually masked at this point, I can go to grayscale and see, okay, there's some darker areas. If I click none, I can see that's a dark pink there. So I'm going to grab that. Why not? I'm going to try to grab all these tones that aren't currently selected. I think that's pretty good. Let's try this shadow. Yeah, that works. The shadow, maybe that's a bit too much. So Control Z to undo that. From here, you can play with the fuzziness. If you do less fuzziness, it's going to be more kind of restrictive about which colors it's selecting. If you do a lot more, it's going to include more colors in there. So I want to dial it back so it's only selecting the pink. As much as I can, at least. I think right in that 60, 70 range, that looks pretty good. So that's okay. And now we have our selection of just the pink color. So what I could do from here is I could go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and I could do something like a Hue and Saturation layer. And because I have this selection, it's automatically going to mask it. So we already have a mask. You can see in the Layers panel here, it's coming with that mask from what we just had. And you can change the hue, for example. So if we want to change the color of the flower, it's just selecting that one color because there was such a bold difference between the green and the color of the flower. It was a very quick and easy way to select everything of that color. Play with the saturation a bit. Now with that one adjustment layer, we have the ability to change these colors. So that can be really helpful if you have a situation where there's a strong contrast between colors. And now we'd have to do that for every image. You might see something like this where you get a little halo of pink because it's out of focus. In that instance, I would probably just make a color layer, touch up the edges. But that's quick and easy to do if we really want to get it clean. So I may, let's see, may go with like a yellow right there. I think that looks cool. All right, let's talk about one more instance and then we can put these together a little bit. Hopefully we'll have some time. This is a tricky situation for masking. I'm wondering if anyone in the chat kind of knows where I'm going with this. But if you have these clouds, it's really hard because the edges are so soft and a lot of times they kind of gradate into wispiness where there's no clear edge. It just kind of gradates out. So how would you handle that? Well, let's see here. If you go into channels, this can be a really helpful method where you click on different channels and you see what has the most contrast. Now, this is the blue, not very contrasty, green. Red is pretty clear because there's not really a lot of red in this image. So we're getting a lot of contrast between the sky and the clouds. So if you click and drag this, since it has the most contrast, we'll choose this one. Click it down to the bottom of this little plus icon. Let go, it'll make a copy for us. You don't want to delete any of these because it'll mess up the image, but we can make a copy here. And now what I can do is I can just increase the contrast a little bit. It has a lot of contrast to start, but I'm trying to push that contrast as much as I can. So I'm going to do Control or Command L for levels. And then I'm just going to try to get rid of some of that white in the sky. I don't want to make the clouds too dark. There's a shadow right there in the cloud. I don't want to make that too dark, so I'm going to try to find a happy medium. Select this mid-tone, get rid of some of that. And I think that looks pretty good, so we'll just click OK. And what I'm going to do is do Control or Command, and I'm going to click this thumbnail for the layer. Now what that does, that selects anything on that layer. You can use this for any normal layer just to select what's on it. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to create a new layer, Control or Command Shift N. And then I'm going to do Edit, Fill, and I'm just going to fill it with white. So if I select this here, let's put a background. I'll make a new layer. Let's call this BG for background. And we'll fill that. Actually, we don't need to do that. We can just pop up our blue from before. So now we have these clouds. Let's try that again. We have these clouds on their own layer. And we can put that, you know, on any background. So if we pop up him, you can see the clouds are over him and we get this kind of cool effect. I can actually, I'll name this clouds. It's good to name these. But I'll drag this and I'll put it behind him in front of our blue background. And now we got some cool clouds that we can play with here. So my hope is that this has given you some good tools for different circumstances. And the thing is, there's so many tools in Photoshop that I don't expect you to become a master of all these right away, because each one of these tools has its own uses, its own situations where it really shines, and its own learning curve to some degree. So I wouldn't try to, you know, become a master of all these tools right at once, but you have the manual tools of the Lasso tool, the Marquee, the pen, the magic wand, the quick selection. You have things like object selection. You have select subject with the refined brush, which is great for hair. And then you have color range and you have channels. So these are all things that are really good in different circumstances, but you put them together and you can get a lot of cool different results. So from here, maybe I'll put in some of our ducks. I might just merge these down so we can grab the, let's see. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I want to leave them. I'll apply this layer mask and I think I'll just move these guys around here. Put some ducks in the background. Put this one here. And what would probably be best to do is put one of these each on its own layer and make it a smart object. So when you size up a different smart object, like I'll delete that and do Control V. I copied it. And I'll right click it, do convert to smart object. So when we size that down, we're not losing the data. It'll maintain that. So that's a good rule of thumb. But for the limited time, I'll just arrange these guys a little bit. Little non-selection tip is a good rule of thumb for composition is kind of big, medium, small. So I'm making these different sizes to add some visual interest. We could also, if we have some time, let's see if we can do this. I will clip my create clipping mask. I'll clip this hue and saturation to my pink one, and I'll just merge those together. I might make a backup normally, but let's use the object selection tool and just grab some of these flowers. So there's a lot of flowers. I don't want to have to cut them all out, so I'm just going to click it. Control Z, and then let's do Control V on top of our background. Actually, we want that on top of the clouds. But, you know, we could put a couple flowers in here. And then let's grab another flower. This one looks kind of good. I like this one. So I'm going to go back to my object selection tool. Click it, select it. I could hold on shift to click those extra petals. No, I would have to click and drag if I want those extra petals added in. All right, that's good enough for our purposes. Let's do Control C, Control or Command C, and then Control or Command V. So put some flowers in here. I might duplicate the other one. Change the sizes up a bit. put our ducks back because we need our ducks. Let's move those ducks back with the other images. And then drag them far enough down. Let's try that again. Get out of that folder. There we go. Now we got this image. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully I showed you something that you can use that you maybe haven't seen before. Definitely try these out. Different circumstances call for different tools, and Photoshop has a lot of them. So have fun with them. My challenge for you for today is just to select at least a couple different objects and put them on the same background. They don't need to be composited together. You don't need to do any lighting adjustments or color adjustments. Just practice cutting things out and put a couple different objects into the same scene and have fun with these tools. You know, get used to them, practice, and I'll see you all in the Discord. And if you haven't joined the Discord, definitely check it out. This is where we're posting all the challenges. I'll be your mentor. I'll be going over these. I'll be giving you feedback. The community gives feedback. You can give feedback to the community. It's a really awesome place, really supportive place to kind of share your work and see what everyone else is up to. So that is it for me for today. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I will see you next time. I hope you all have a great one. Thanks again, everybody.